Good morning, or depending when you're watching this, good afternoon, good evening, or good night. My name is Ross, and as always told, I had a voice radio. So today, I am showing you a very nice new card coming out in Shining Legends. Now, this is a set on which I did a video just yesterday, which is going to be coming out in October in its own set of products, kind of like Generations did. And the card we're looking at initially is Entei GX. Now, we all like new GXs. Entei's been waiting a little while. Question is he any good? Well, 180 HP is incredibly standard for a Stage 1 GX. Retreat of 2 is a bit of a pain. Being a fire is quite good because you're hitting weakness on Lurantis and Decidueye, but not Tapu Bulu, who for some reason has no weakness. Being weak to water is a little bit of a pain because you're weak to Lapras and Greninja, but of course if you can be getting big one-hit KOs on Lapras, the weakness doesn't really matter. So, what do we have in terms of attacks here? For a fire and a colourless energy, 50 damage with Ember. It's alright. It's very standard. It's very underwhelming. Now, if you were to put a choice band on here, you're doing 80 to EXs or GXs, which is really annoying. Generally, you want to be doing 90, so you're going to be getting 2-hit KOs on things like Yveltal and stuff like that, the 180 HP EXs and GXs. And then if you had a Professor Kukui, you're doing 100, but then that doesn't 2-hit KO the 210 HP Stage 1 GXs, or indeed the Stage 2 GXs. It's a little bit underwhelming. For 2 fire and a colourless, you can do 100 damage plus burn. Now, the new burn rules here are very, very much in Entei GX's favour. Because nowadays, when you're burned, you take 20 damage between turns, after your turn, after your opponent's, etc. Flip a coin. If heads, you are no longer burned, which means burn is instantly doing 20 damage, and then if your opponent doesn't flip a heads and doesn't get out of the active, then they're going to be taking another 20 damage, and so on and so on. Now we're getting up to slightly respectable numbers, but it's still very much underwhelming. If we look at something like Tapu Koko, for instance, he's doing a nice straightforward 130 for free energy, and that's an awful lot better. Not to mention, of course, that Tapu Koko has the really cool ability. And I just find Entei here very underwhelming. Now, I know you get the burn, but that still only puts up to 120 rather than 130, and there's plenty of ways to get around burn. If your opponent is a fairy deck, for instance, playing a Comfy, then you cannot burn them. And that means that you're just doing 100 for free energy. Now, it's still better than Charizard as a Stage 2 doing 70 for free energy. Yes, I am going to keep bringing that up in video after video. But you know what, ladies and gentlemen? It's just not particularly good. Now, the numbers work out an awful lot better here, because with a choice band, you got up to 130. 150 with burn, which will KO pretty much all non-GXs. And then, of course, if you pop a choice band down and use a Professor Kukui, you're doing 150. But then, of course, burn comes in to do 170, so it won't really get any GXs, except for Marshadow, who's only got 150 HP. But it will get an awful lot of EXs, so it's not the end of the world. Now, in terms of GX attack, Entei here has actually got a pretty good one. 2 fire, 1 colourless, and I'm a big fan of this because, as I say in many of my videos, if you can have a GX attack without adding extra energy, I'm looking at you, Lurantis, then it's really nice, because who wants to add extra energy just to do a GX attack that is a once per game thing? And the answer very simply is, not me. The GX attack for free energy, 150 to one of your opponent's bench Pokemon. You're sniping for 150. This is pretty huge as far as sniping attacks go. Now, if you want an example of a really good sniping attack at the moment, we've got Tapu Fini GX coming out in Burning Shadows. Well, this is going to do 120 damage, and you've got to discard 2 energy. Whereas this does 150, and means that it's just your GX attack for the turn. Now remember, it's 1 GX attack of any description per game, But there's several uses you could make of this. I mean, firstly, you could play wide lens here. Now you're doing 300 to a Grass Week GX. And of course here I'm thinking Decidueye GX. And yes, I know it'll do 300 to any Grass Week Pokemon, but why would you want to do 300 to other grass Pokemon? Doesn't make a huge amount of sense. Or maybe even something like a Solgaleo GX that's just sitting there chilling on the bench. Fire's a decent type to have. And the other use I really, really like for this, although it will be rotated by the time Entei is released, is Vileplume. Because a lot of the time when you're playing against Vileplume, you really want to take the Vileplume out so that you can then go ahead doing your deck's thing using all of the item cards you're so fond of. The problem is, ladies and gentlemen, that it's hard to KO that Vileplume when he's on the bench. You can use a Lysander, but of course you might not have a Lysander and you can't use a Versus Seeker, and it can be quite hard to find that Lysander. Although, to be honest, nowadays it is much easier to find a Lysander using Tapu Lele. But I digress. Vileplume has 130 HP, so you can here use Entei to snipe that Vileplume on the bench, get rid of him entirely, and then reactivate your item cards. Now, it's a once per game attack, so if your opponent gets a second Vileplume out, nothing's going to happen. But in principle, I'm okay with this. This seems like a decent arrangement for me. So, all in all, I love the GX attack. I'm a big, big fan. Now, the other attacks do seem a little bit overpriced, but I do need to point out here that as a fire Pokemon, Entei's got a whole bunch of options available to him, especially being a basic. You've got Max Elixir. Look at the top 6 cards of your deck, attach a basic energy you find to a bench basic Pokemon. Max Elixir can be used to build up Entei a little bit faster here. Not to mention, we've got the non-EX or Baby Volcanion, hey Nick, who can use Power Heater to accelerate energy nice and quickly onto Entei here. And don't forget, in Burning Shadows we're getting Kiawe, who allows you to search your deck for 4 fire energy and attach them to one of your Pokemon. And then of course, if we flick into the expanded format, we've got the amazing card Blacksmith. And as a side note, people have been asking me about the cards I most want to see reprinted. Oh my goodness, Blacksmith is near the top of the list. I love Blacksmith. Blacksmith allows you to attach 2 fire energy from your discard, and you can then attach that to Entei, and now, ladies and gentlemen, you are really rocking and rolling because you're getting this up so quickly. As a side note, Blacksmith is only to one of your fire Pokemon, but of course Entei fits here as a fire Pokemon. So the attacks here aren't terribly expensive, but either way, we've got plenty of options to get the energy onto Entei. So actually, if we take it as we can get the energy on him quite easily, maybe the attacks aren't as bad as we think. And that brings me really to my finishing point for the Entei video. We've got better options. 100 for 3 energy plus burn is fine. 50 for 2 energy is fine. And if we didn't have any other brilliant fire attackers and we wanted to play against decks like Lurantis, like Decidueye, I could get on board with this. I really, really could. But honestly, ladies and gentlemen, Turtonator. Now, for those of you that aren't aware, I've just started live streaming, twitch.tv/PTCGRadio. It's going to be happening every Thursday at 8 PM UK time. Check Google to see what it is in your time zone. And honestly, ladies and gentlemen, there's going to be other live streams, so check my Twitter @TheWassy for more news on that. Although I will be live streaming on YouTube occasionally as well, so just flick on and find it. Make sure you're subscribed and you're getting the notifications. But I played a lot of Turtonator on my live stream last night. Turtonator is amazing. Free energy, 160. Yeah, you've got to discard 2 energy, but like we've said, getting energy onto fire Pokemon isn't the hardest thing in the world at the moment. Shell Trap is an amazing attack that does 20 damage, which is not amazing. But then if Turtonator is damaged by an attack the following turn, you get to put 8 damage counters on them. Then, of course, we've got Volcanion EX, who can do 130 for free energy, but's got the amazing Steam Up ability, allowing you to discard a fire energy from your hand and do 30 extra damage. We're going to be getting Ho-Oh GX in Burning Shadows, and my point, ladies and gentlemen, is this. I don't think Entei is a terrible Pokemon. I think he's got a good GX attack and underwhelming other attacks. But I think when you compare him to the other basic fire Pokemon we have at the moment, he's just nowhere near as good. Although, as a side note, I do think Entei has got the best fire GX attack on a basic we have yet seen in terms of attacking. But I don't know if he's worth playing just for that. Maybe as a one-card tech in other fire decks just for the GX attack, but that is the only use I'm seeing for Entei, and that's why I'm giving him between 2 and 3 Wossies. Although, as a side note, something I must point out, and I cannot stress this enough, we don't give half Wossies because that would be barbaric. Commiserations to Eagleheart Animates, who got very excited in the comment section to my previous video about the prospect of an Entei GX. It's not the GX you were looking for. One card tech at best. Now, you know the deal, ladies and gentlemen. There is a comment section. Go nuts. Be nice. Follow me on Twitter at The Wossie. Like this video. Subscribe to this channel. Check out my streaming on Twitch. It's going to be a lot of fun. And, of course, the most important thing as always, look after yourselves until next time. Thank you very much for watching. My name's Ross, and you've been watching PTCG Radio.